Okay. All right. We are recording now. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. And today my guest is Tanner Howard of Lone Peak Leather Company, or Stockisons.
How's it
And
going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, it's been a while. I think 2 years since we last spoke.
Yeah.
Well, at least on the podcast, we spoke, obviously. But
Yeah. It's funny because I just released that video a couple days ago where we're using your Stockisons a lot on our elk hunts, doing
yeah,
a lot of spot and stock elk hunting, and also in January, February, well, right around March, we released some film from Arizona where we did the spot and stock mule deer, spot and stock. We did mule deer and we did javelina,
yeah,
and so, but more recently, the elk, and getting a lot of questions from people saying, you know, when do you put those on? Do you wear socks with them? How do they hold up and all that kind of stuff? So I just figured, why don't we just get on a call and do a quick podcast and kind of talk about the Stockisons a little bit, what makes them a little bit different than everything else.
yeah,
And I think an origin story about kind of where these came about, how come they exist? How come you started doing this? But before we get into that, and that's kind of where I want this to go. Hopefully this wind isn't too bad on my
I can't hear it.
microphone.
You're good.
Good.
Yeah,
Before we get into that, I wanted to touch base. I want to talk a little bit about my impression of the Stockisons and what I think about them.
yeah,
So I got them introduced to me a while back. I think it was Kip Fowler I saw was using them on social. A few people brought it up. I don't
yeah.
remember how I came
Yeah, he was one of the
across.
original guys that really started
Yeah.
using them.
And there's a lot of different ones out there on the market, but I got drawn to yours, and then I got a pair. And sure enough, as I've used them, I feel like, you still there?
Yeah,
Okay. As I've used the Stockisons, my internet connection is giving me fits. As I've used the Stockisons, and then also used a lot of different brands of other types of footwear when I go hunting.
yeah,
There's a few things that really stood out for me with the Stockisons. One was the cactuses.
yeah,
Wearing socks and wool socks or something, sneaking around, that is a recipe for disaster when you're hunting in arid areas where there's a lot of cactus. And
oh, yeah.
Arizona and some of this high country elk hunting that we're doing, high country mule deer in these arid regions,
Even areas you wouldn't even necessarily think would have cactus.
absolutely. My first experience with the prickly pear, like cactus on the ground, like there's so many varieties, was in Alberta actually, and chasing Alberta mule deer, and that was rough. And my experience chasing Alberta mule deer with the Stockisons was, well, I didn't have them at the time. Man, it was scary. And even tennis shoes, you'd get stabbed through the side of
Oh,
even
yeah,
though your sole was good, it would stab through the side and into your foot, and then you'd be picking out thorns. So that was one of the issues. I needed something that could protect my feet from thorns.
yeah.
And then the other thing was, I wanted something. I noticed that a lot of times my feet would slide around in different footwear, especially
Instant socks.
socks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you'd be falling on your butt and stuff because you're wearing like socks that will just slide and move on you.
Slop around. Yep.
So the Stockisons laced up super tight. So that was a big game changer. And then as I wore them, people ask, well, when do you put them on and how often do you wear them? Basically, nowadays, when I'm on spot and stock hunts in Arizona or up in these mountains, like this elk hunt I just released the other day, that
Yep.
3-part series, I wear
You're
Stockisons.
using like most of the day, right?
I wear them all day. I
Yeah.
sleep in them. I wake up the next morning and I hunt in them. The only time I put on my boots is to hike in or to move camp. Otherwise, I never take them off. They're on me 24/7. I like just the lightness of it. It feels good
Yeah.
on my feet. I don't get tired walking around in Stockisons all day. I got good feet, strong feet. So, and I feel like my feet only feel better, day after day, the more I wear those for a month, or two at a time.
Strengthens your arches. I can't do that. I got these weak feet. You could
When I
probably do it barefoot if you wanted. I'm a pansy.
when I was out with Valkyrie Archery with Brent Hahn, I killed my
Yeah.
buck, and then he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go down the mountain and I'm gonna go get the truck and everything." And it was a long trek, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna pull the deer off the mountain." He's like, "But you don't have any boots on." I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna the whole body." And
Yeah.
in those Stockisons, I carried my buck all the way down the mountain and down to, and just as he was driving up with his truck, I show up with this deer, and he's like, "I can't believe you did that, let alone in a pair of Stockisons." So I put him through the paces, and that's another
Yeah.
thing I wanted to touch on. Those the like supple buck leather Stockisons, the original pair, the first pair I got from you.
Yeah.
Those things have been indestructible for the most part. I've worn through the first layer of leather, but not the second layer.
You use them probably more than most guys ever will. But yeah,
I
you're
think,
one of the few guys that's actually been able to wear through a layer of them. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's just leather soles. You can't have,
well, and that's the thing is,
unrealistic expectations. But
a couple of years of wearing them all day on sharp shale and rock, and
yeah,
using them as hardcore as I've worn them, you couldn't ask for more durability out of a pair of these things. So
I love hearing that.
yeah, so for me, I just think they're legit. My second pair that you made some changes to, they didn't hold up as well. They were a little more
I sent
water
you some
resilient.
prototypes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they were I like testing them, and they had pros and cons, but I definitely liked the version you have. Not the prototype was a good test, but it didn't quite.
Yeah, I think those ones I sent you, the prototypes, they had a suede sole instead of the top grain leather. I don't know if people that know leather will know the difference, but the suede doesn't have that top layer of natural skin that really holds it together nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping it would work because the suede's a little bit quieter.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. That's the one thing I should mention is that the Stockisons are a little bit louder, because there's no felt or padding on the bottom of the leather. When you step on super dry ground, like in Arizona, there's like these little dead grass sticking up of these dead, dried out plants, and when you step on them, it's like,
and the sound carries like crazy. I remember you talking about that, and you said you could hear people talking from
forever
away,
500 yards, 1,000 yards. So the thing about the Stockisons was, I was looking for some amount of softness to put on the bottom, so when I walked in them, they'd still be quiet. Well, I messed around with so many different things. My wife even, I think I showed you, she sewed me up some felt bottoms, and my cousin Ben bought some felt bottoms that I put over top my Stockisons. I went with different weighted socks. I ran all these different setups, and what I ended up with and settling down on was a pair of darn tough wool socks that are knee high.
Put them over the top.
And I pull those over the top of my Stockison, and it works for me on a number of levels. And one is, first of all, again, it protects against the cactuses, but the way it laces up, my feet don't slide in them, so I get good purchase on the ground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when I pull the sock on over the top, it acts as a gaiter, keeping dirt and dust and things from getting inside the Stockison, because any boot at all can get dirt in there. And the Stockison, because of the way it laces up in the leather, it can get some in there as well, just through the laces in the country I'm in, sliding downhill and dust and stuff. So the sock acts as a natural gaiter, keeping rocks and pebbles and dirt and stuff out. And when I pull it up to my knee and tuck my pants
especially when you're wearing them all day, that gets important.
For sure.
Stuff out of them.
If I'm just like sneaking on a spot, you know, it's not as critical. But I need my pants to not swish around either, or when my
Yep.
pants brush up against a sagebrush or something like that, I need my pants not to make noise. And it's shocking how much noise your pants will make rubbing up against something. It's shocking
Oh
versus
yeah.
a
Especially in
sock.
the desert.
Yeah.
Especially in the desert.
And so when you pull your sock up to your knee and I tuck my pants in there, I look like some kind of, you know, Japanese ninja, but still, um, it it I'm able to, my pants don't get caught on a brush, a sticker or anything.
Yeah.
They don't get caught. And then when I brush up against it, it's dead silent because it's just my leg with that sock on it. And then the bottom of the sock just enough cushion that it silences your footsteps
Kind
a
of muff. Yep.
little bit of muffled. And in the end, I determined that carpet or felt or any of those bulkier items kind of canceled out their usefulness when I tried to incorporate them into the Stockasin because they would pick up debris and sticks and branches, and
Yeah.
then I'd just carry those with me, and then I'd break those or it would just get too matted up. And I had some that were disposable. It just didn't work as how I thought it would when it went to
Yeah.
the real world.
Interestingly enough, I've heard from several guys, I would say at this point, I mean, I don't hear feedback from everyone by any means, but I've heard from at least a dozen guys that in their own individual way have started using socks over the top and have loved it.
Yep.
In a minute here, I'll actually touch on that specific problem because we recently have released something that kind of is geared towards solving that problem of super dry desert climate, and I'll touch on that in a minute. When you originally were talking about cactus, that was the first thing that drew your attention when you saw Stockisons. That was actually the reason that I came up with them in the first place. So I grew up, my dad has always made saddles on the side. He grew up on a ranch, on a cattle ranch, and he's a doctor now, but you know, as a kind of a desire to keep in touch with his ranching roots, he started building saddles when he was in his, I think his early 30s. So we always had a leather shop, and I'm sure as a kid, to keep me busy, he'd throw me a piece of leather and I'd mess around with it or whatnot, you know, to keep me out of his hair. But when I started bow hunting, when I think I was 18, I'd been rifle hunting my whole life, but it was a more of like, let's go, you go one time a year, 1 week a year with the family. It was less of like a lifestyle as it is now for me, and it was more of a tradition. But I started watching more hunting shows of those as those have become more popular. And I saw bow hunting. I was like, man, I want whatever those guys are feeling and experiencing. I want that.
Yeah.
So I picked up a bow and just kind of started learning on my own. And I cut my teeth here nearby in Utah. We have what's called the extended archery season, which goes from August all the way almost to the end of the year. And it's the goal of it is to put more hunters in these areas where there's a lot of urban areas to keep the deer up on the hill as opposed to migrating in the winter down into the cities and getting hit by cars and whatnot. So the hills we're hunting are extremely steep, and the deer don't come down until late. But me being a newbie, I figured, oh, there's got to be deer up there. So I started in August hunting that unit religiously, thinking there's got to be deer up there. So I hunted 28 days of that season before I finally shot a deer, and I shot this little 3-point that I couldn't be more proud. I shot bigger deer with a rifle, but that feeling was just something I had never experienced. But in the process of getting to that point, you know, I had seen on the hunting shows these guys taking their boots off to be quiet, and I was like, man, if I'm going to kill a deer, I got to do that. There's no other option. So one day I took my boots off and was sneaking around in an area that I didn't think would have cactus, of course.
Yeah.
And in the moment, boom, get a cactus spine like almost 3/4 of an inch up into the bottom of my foot. But I had to just keep going because I was in the middle of a stalk, whatnot. At this point, I just graduated high school. I was still living at home. So I come walking in the door, and my dad sees me limping in. And he's like, what'd you do to yourself? Kind of like half pissed off, like dads can be. And I was like, well, I took my boots off to stalk a deer. He's like, why are you taking your boots off? He's not a bow hunter, so he doesn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, well, Dad, that's just what you do. It's just you take your boots off.
Right.
He's like, well, that's dumb. Go out into the leather shop and make a pair of moccasins. And I was like, all right. So at this point, I had zero experience in leather, but I went out and made this crude, ugly pair of moccasins. And I've told this story before. I think I might have told it briefly
Sure.
in your last podcast, but there's people that haven't heard it. So this ugly pair of yellow buckskin moccasins. And my friends saw them. They thought they were interesting. So I made some for them and then their friends. Man, it didn't take but 6 months. And I had already shipped to a few states. And it wasn't really a business thing at that point. It was just like, hey, people want them. I'm a student. I'm poor. Hey, I can make a few bucks here or there. But it didn't take long to realize that, wow, people like these and they're helpful. So that's where Stalkasins began. And then obviously through the years, I've just gotten better at what I do and try to improve the quality, try to improve the design. And to kind of segue into what the latest thing we've done is to try to solve that problem in desert climates that I've noticed, and you've noticed, a lot of guys have noticed, that not only does the sound carry forever, it seems like, in the desert for whatever reason, the little tiny twigs that are just brittle, the leather, even though it's probably the same as walking barefoot, still makes more noise than what is ideal. So I had actually got a lot of requests for these, and I wasn't like super interested in doing it at first, but I finally got enough requests. I was like, fine, I'll do some R&D and make these. So these are what we call our hybrids. So it's a wool felt with leather reinforcements and a leather insole to give yourself a little bit more puncture resistance than just the wool. It's obviously a trade-off, just like everything is. You're trading some durability for some, being extra quiet, and you're trading some puncture resistance for the same thing. But a lot of guys have been really pumped about these, and we've already got a bunch of orders for them. People are excited to use them. We tested them last year, and we sent some to some people in the industry to use, and we got really good feedback. So they're not for everyone, definitely not for everyone, because they're going to wear off faster. You got to have realistic expectations. It's a pressed wool felt that will be a lot quieter. It's not a woven fabric like a sock is. So in a sock, if you wear a hole, it's eventually just going to unravel and open up quickly. This being a non-woven material is going to hold together longer. But at the same time, it's still wool felt, right? So not for everyone, but if you are a guy that hunts in the desert and you're frustrated with everything you've tried, kind of like you and a lot of guys, this could be a great option. We're not pushing them super hard just because they aren't for everyone. The guys that know they need it will know. And that's just kind of how we're doing it right now is, get the idea out there. And if people, they'll know if guys like you, guys that hunt in the desert, they've tried everything. So they'll know if this is right for them. But that's been exciting. That's kind of the latest thing that we're dealing with. And I'm in the process of working on another problem within the stalking shoe. And then hopefully for next season, we'll have rolled out. But that's kind of the origin story and kind of the up-to-date image of picture of what we're doing right now.
Well, I feel like you've done such a great job building, when we first met, you're like, well, I need some lead time. I'm in college. I'm getting a degree, and I'm going to go be a businessman or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You're going to use this degree to do. And then fast forward to finishing school, and you have a business that's actually, a budding opportunity. And it's funny, your intention was just this as a hobby on the side, little side business while you're going to school. But now you've made such a great product, and you're in a fun industry. So what's the update? Are you going to stay? Are you going to do?
This is what I do full time right now, and me and my wife have been doing it. We since had a kid last year. We have a baby girl that's 1 year old now, so she's kind of taking care of her while I work and do this during the day. But I don't have any other plans right now. This is kind of what I'm going to do until we hit a dead end. But because there's such a great community of guys that share info like you and other guys in the industry, when problems like a stalking shoe or, some type of solution to be more quiet, when someone finds what they believe is a solution, it spreads pretty quickly. So thanks to the guys in the community that aren't afraid of sharing things that work for them, we've been able to grow pretty quickly. And I'm super grateful for that. I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are probably more gifted and more driven than me, but I just happen to stumble upon something that works, and I'm really grateful, and I'm going to take it as far as I can. But
well, I think you're selling yourself a bit short though, because Ryan Lampers, myself, Kip, others, we've been wearing these things, and if we didn't like them, if they were junk, we'd have discarded them in the junk pile, like a lot of things that we try.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have badmouthed you or anything, but we just wouldn't have brought it up, And here we are, fast forward, and it's like you seek myself out, you seek Ryan out, you ask us what worked, what doesn't work. We love working with companies that come to us. We are the ones that like really test things. Like, not a lot of guys are going to spend 20 days in a pair of these up on a mountain on one hunt. They don't have that time off. We're blessed with the path that we've taken to be able to do that. So we're in that unique position to say, no, this doesn't work or this does work. Lampers lives in those hippie sandals. Like he wears your Stockisons. I wear those Stockisons around town, around the house. We wear them constantly. They're footwear for us.
Yeah.
And
it is for some guys. Some guys do that and they love it.
Yeah. I think it's really good for people to spend some time walking around in just plain old foot to the ground leather moccasin, because too many people have a foot that they've locked into a shoe, which is like a coffin for their foot, and their foot doesn't have the strength and the mobility and the agility and all the things that it really should have. And you have to be very careful if you've spent 30 or 40 years in real stiff shoes or real shoes where you and then you're going to go out and run barefoot or walk around, or you have to be really careful. A lot of people do get injured or get pull their tendons or the ligaments in the arch of their foot and cause some damage. So you got to be careful. You got to work your way up. But I feel like the Stockisons are something that I'll roll up to Ryan's house and he'll come out of the house and they're on his feet.
He's wearing them.
He's walking around the house and he's moving stuff in and out of the garage, and we're both the same like that. We love him. When we're up there in Arizona, he'll leave for 3 or 4 days and go chase what he's chasing. I'll chase him, and we'll hook up and we'll meet up, midweek, and we'll both walk up to each other. We're both wearing Stockisons. There is no.
That's great. That makes me happy to hear. I mean, sure, it's cool having a business that's successful, but it's cool to look around and just see people using something and being satisfied with something you've made. Whether or not you made money doing it, that's cool too, right? But it's cool for me to see, I made those. That's kind of cool to see people enjoying them.
Well, the thing is,
keep doing it as long as we can.
When you look around and you see this product, though, there's not a lot of people out there, a lot of products like this, because they are a handmade kind of. They're lost art almost. Like I know you can Google and find moccasins, but yours are built for your purpose built, not just to lounge around in.
It's interesting because when I came into the market space, I guess really the only options were you either had to make your footwear yourself, your stocking footwear yourself, or you had to go spend $400 to $600 on a pair of custom made Native American inspired moccasins. Mm-hmm. Which, sure, they may, on their webpage, they may say, hey, they're great for hunting, but they weren't specifically made for hunting per se. I personally wouldn't want to get $600 moccasins dirty, but we've tried to be very focused in what they're for. We could market them as a lifestyle moccasin, but we want to stay focused on what they're for. And if guys want to use them for something else, they're going to find a use for them. But what we specifically try to make these for is for hunting. That's why the design we have is a tight lace-up fit, meant to fit more like a sock, as opposed to some of these other moccasins you might see that
they don't go up above your ankle.
I'm talking like ones that you can buy in Cabela's or whatnot that some guys will use for stocking. They don't lace up, and they're going to slop around. And sure, they probably work for some people and they're happy, but some guys get frustrated with the slop, and so these are meant to really lace up tight.
Yeah,
they have a double layered sole to turn back the cactus. And
I'm just curious, as you went on this journey and you've kind of explored this stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see, any traditional Native American moccasins that are similar to what you've come up with? I mean,
Well, when I originally made the first pair for myself, I
mm-hmm.
literally went on Google and just typed moccasins, and I just
Mm-hmm.
started looking through designs. At that point, I wasn't looking for like, oh, that would be great performing. It was more like, I suck at making leather stuff, so let's find something that's simple.
Yeah.
And I found a simple design that wrapped around your foot, used a simple button, and that's kind of what inspired the first pair. But it didn't take long to realize, no, it's got to be something that laces up. So I was kind of stuck like, okay, do I stick with the Native American inspired look, which I love? Like, I personally am fascinated by Native American history, culture. I got a bunch of books I read. I kind of inherited that from my dad. He's really into that. But I kind of had to decide, okay, am I going to go for kind of the look of these, or am I going to go for pure performance, let's say? So I kind of had to pivot and go, no, we're just going to go for what works. And if they look cool, that's a bonus. But at the end of the day, guys want to kill animals. You know, that's what's most important. If they look cool, that's a bonus. But that's kind of what we went. And so now they kind of ended up looking like old Chuck Taylor, shoes. That's high tops. That's kind of what they look like, I think, in my opinion. That's what a lot of people say.
Converse.
Sure, there may be people that would prefer a more Native American style looking moccasin, but I guess our product just wouldn't be for them,
Yeah. What are the pros and cons from your standpoint? Someone's looking at getting a pair of Stockisons. What do you tell them?
Well, to be honest, I haven't had to say a lot up to this point, because guys that, originally when we first started, we didn't have a big reach. We didn't have guys spreading the word. It was just, maybe you saw us on Instagram, or maybe your friend told you about us. It was mostly the guys that already had the problem, and the second they saw these, like, that's it, that's the solution. Now, as time goes on, the reach has grown. We've got guys like you and others, Kip, Ryan, that are spreading the word. And you have people, that are maybe just getting into bow hunting. I know you got a lot of followers that have just recently got into bow hunting that may not fully understand, the pros and cons. So what I would say is that, first of all, there's a big difference in how quiet you can be in boots versus something else, right? Let's just say the default choice would be in your socks. There's a huge difference. And that's what surprised me when I first started bow hunting, which hasn't been that long. It's been like 8 years for me. I was blown away at the difference it makes being in and out of boots. So first off is just realizing it does make a big difference to ditch your boots. But then the question is, what do you do next? Sure, you could go in your socks, and a lot of guys do, and they love it, and they don't see any reason to change, and that's totally fine. But there are guys that get sick of the cactus, get sick of, either got soft feet like I do, or they just want to have something they can run around in all day without eventually wearing out your feet. Because even if you've got calluses, run around in socks, you're eventually going to tear your feet up.
You'll get some hot feet at the end of the day, just from all the rock that you got to walk on.
Yeah.
You'll feel like your feet got bruised.
Yeah. Yep. Or just tearing up your socks. Obviously that happens too. So I would say, realizing that there is a big difference in noise, and then kind of evaluating, okay, what type of terrain am I in? Do I need a lot of cactus protection? Would I like that? Or am I more just looking to be extra quiet? Because if guys are not worried about cactus and they just want to be really quiet, now I would recommend, the hybrids. Or if, you're happy in your socks, stay in your socks. But having something that you can cinch up tight is also super important, like you touched on. Not slopping around in your socks. So
I'm curious about the felt on a river crossing or something.
For grip?
Just because your leather isn't really meant to get wet. On the Stockisons, I don't wear them when it's raining.
But it's just they're gonna dry out quicker.
Yeah. So. They handled some damp weather pretty darn good. I still used them. I used them a bunch in wet conditions, but generally I try to keep them dry and out of water. And when it does rain or it is really wet, generally you don't need Stockisons at that point, because the
ground's
conditions
already
are
quiet.
quiet, yeah, you can just
Yeah.
sneak up on your animal in a pair of Laponia boots or something, you know.
Yeah.
You don't need those to go
Yeah, I get
out
that
there,
question
so.
a lot. Actually, guys ask me, how are these in the, are they waterproof? No, they're not, because really, when it's wet, it's slippery and it's already quiet. So
Yep.
you're risking, slipping around when the benefit of wearing something other than your boots is nothing, really. So
Yeah, you don't really need them to be waterproof. But I
but
was thinking
morning dew
about
and
it.
stuff, it turns back morning dew,
Yeah,
fine, stuff like that. So,
even if it bleeds through and you get wet feet, it dries out, and
yeah.
usually, it's September or whatever, or it's Arizona kind of conditions, or Alberta.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. One thing though is, guys have a camp shoe. They like bringing a camp shoe on a backpack
Yeah.
hunt, so they'll bring like a croc or something. And
Yep.
a croc is kind of
Awesome.
nice to cross a river or a creek bed or
Yeah.
something if you need to.
Mhm.
But as far as a camp shoe goes, my favorite is the Stockasin.
And you sleep in yours, right?
I
That's what you said?
sleep in mine.
Yeah. I do too sometimes if they're clean enough.
Yeah, I just dust them off or wipe them off, and then
Got to get up and pee, just hop right out.
exactly. And they're comfy. They feel nice, so I can sleep in them no
Yeah.
problem.
Mhm.
And just they're just I don't see the need to take them off. I just
Sweet.
crawl in there, go to sleep, and I'm ready to go the next morning. And I don't know, it's funny, but I don't. I've slept in them a lot. But the thing with Stockisons is it's nice when you're wearing a boot all day and you get back to camp
Finally get out of them.
to get out of them and throw on some leather moccasins and then walk around and just chill for the evening.
Oh yeah.
It's comfortable in your tent as well, and so I like bringing them. Almost, I'm not going to bring them if I'm not going to use them for stalking game. It's a rifle hunt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see they've got a dual purpose when I'm doing bow hunts and I'm backpacked in, because I can use my boots to get around, sure, but I do like having the camp shoe option. It's just nice. They don't weigh too much, and one thing about them, we talked about this before, because the prototype was a little stiffer, but the other ones, just the leather is so supple. It's like I don't know. It's almost like taking a t-shirt and wadding it up and throwing it in your pack. You can just
roll them up.
You can just roll them up and just toss them in your bag. They're not a structured large object, that retains its shape. They just kind of are limp, and they just stow away really easy. And so it's nice to just throw them in your bag for a few days and just bring it out when you need it.
Exactly. Just stuff them in the bottom and forget about it.
Yep. So yeah, I'm a big fan, dude. Right now, how long, if a guy wants it, because hunting season's coming up, we got about a month or less than a month.
Depends on when your opener is. It's obviously super seasonal, so we get just get a big surge of orders. We're about 3 weeks out right now, and that'll start to go down quickly once we get through this surge.
Yeah.
But I would say, order right away if people want them for this year.
Yep.
Yep.
The pronghorn, you got, early season mule deer, and then you got your elk coming up around the corner. But if a guy ordered today, he could have them for elk season.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. We're shipping almost 2 of the day at 3 weeks out.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, because it's funny because I keep telling everybody to leave their elk calls at home if they want to kill elk, and do a lot more like spot and stalk.
I listened to that podcast today, actually, of yours talking about that. So.
Yeah, I did one with Brian Barney last year as well when I was up at the Western Hunting Summit with Lampers, and Barney does the same thing. Like, you start to find there's quite a few guys that kill big elk every year on public land, and they're doing it without blowing a call at all. Not a single.
I've been surprised at how many guys use them only for elk. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I say only, they use them like hardcore for elk. I always imagine, this would be mostly for mule deer. Mm-hmm. But man, I personally use them a lot for whitetail. These whitetail behind me, that's kind of I hunt mule deer. I'm from Utah, but I'm originally from South Dakota, so we go back every year and hunt whitetail. So I love hunting whitetail, spot and stalk. And then we've got guys that have killed mountain goats, pronghorn, pretty much every species at this point. It's been cool to watch the different ways people find use for them.
I use them year round, especially. Like I said, I wear them around the house as well. So I'm a big fan. If people want to get a hold of, because they're called Stockisons, but your company is Lone Peak Leather.
Yeah, Lone Peak Leather, lonepeakleather.com. If you just Google it, it'll pop up.
Okay,
Instagram as well.
We put links in the last movie. We put links down in the description field, and we'll keep doing that. So people want to find the website, they just click Lone Peak Leather company link, and they can get themselves lined out. You guys are selling them. How much is a pair of Stockisons right now?
$155.
Okay.
Yep.
$155, and I would say that they're going to last years.
Yeah, I mean, you wear yours all day, so it's really hard to give a concrete number to people. People always want a concrete number. It's hard to say. If you're using them all day, every day, you'll get several seasons. If you're a guy like me that only wears them for stocks, I still have the first pair I made. Well, not like the OG pair, but the first real lace-up pair. I still have that pair, and I still use them. And it's been 6 years, so
I want to say I put at least 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles on mine, for sure.
Wow. I didn't know it was that much.
Considering 2 years.
Yeah.
On all my hunts, I usually average on a pair of boots. I'll easily put 2,000 miles on a pair of boots in 1 year. There's been a couple of years, and of course, I don't wear the Stockisons on every hunt or every day.
Yeah.
But I went 3 weeks in them in Arizona. I went a month in them twice for elk.
Yeah.
That's 60, 90.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, I put at least, I want to say, 200 days in Stockisons, plus wearing them around the house and all that. So
yeah,
in the last few years,
we've had a few guides wear them out, and then you and maybe 2 other guys that have worn through the soles, but it takes quite a bit. Yeah. It's actually one of the things that surprised me when I first started making them. I figured, we'll see how long these last, but
yeah,
pretty good. I would say your average guy will get at least 4 seasons. And then I would add the wool version. I would say definitely, 3 seasons, 2-3 seasons for sure for everyone. Mm-hmm. And with all of our Stockisons, if you wear through your soles, just get in contact with us and we can resole them for less than $40 for you. So
that's cool.
So yeah, so just let us know.
I was gonna say, like, the only part is the sole. The uppers are still.
Yeah, those will last forever as long as you keep them conditioned. I get that question. I should probably answer that. What do people ask? What do you use to waterproof them or condition them? Do I have any specific recommendation? Not really. Not a brand or anything. The guys that do put some waterproofing on them typically use a wax-based product because you can rub it in there. You can heat it up with a blow dryer, let it really sink into the leather, and then also you can rub that wax stuff in the seams to really try to give a little bit more waterproofing.
Nice.
I don't do that just because I haven't seen a need for it, but some guys like to do that. I guess the only downside would be it attracts a little bit more dirt when you have the wax on there. But guys probably don't care, if they're just killing elk with them, getting them bloody. But there's that, and then just keep them dry. Keep them, if they get wet, let them dry naturally. Don't throw them by the fire; it'll dry them out too quick. And then just put some type of leather conditioner on them. Like heck, in a pinch, you could throw olive oil on there, butter. Honestly, just whatever you need. But
the
soles kind of get a natural cure to them, so you typically don't need to worry about that. But the uppers, just keep them conditioned, keep them moisturized every now and then, once a year maybe.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm stoked, dude. It's another season, getting ready to throw them on. It's one of those pieces of gear that I use intensely, but don't really talk about that much, But then those moments come along, and then I'm like, people ask, they're like, "Oh, you're wearing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love these things. I wear them all the time." But it's not at the forefront. As I was editing the last film, I'm coming down the hill and I see the Stockisons, and I film the Stockisons. It's like, huh, yeah. But it doesn't occur to me as, like, for instance, my backpack or my bow or something where I think about that as a key part of my gear. But I can't stand the idea of hunting without Stockisons anymore.
That's
Like
cool to
to
hear.
go on a hunt like that and not have a pair
Yeah.
just seems sacrilegious at this point. Like can't be doing that. I'm not
It
down with
should be
that.
a pretty easy transition for guys that start using them. I mean, it's not like something you need to really get used to. You just throw
No.
them on and start
Nope.
running around.
Easy. So well,
It's the
cool,
only other
dude.
thing I would add since we're
Yeah.
here. I'm just thinking of like questions that I get a
Sure.
lot. The other one would be on the sizing. People ask, how do I know what size to get? We try our best to have our sizes line up with your actual shoe size, but guys think their feet are bigger than they are. Women think their feet are smaller than they actually are. So we always encourage people to check out our sizing chart. And on there, it gives a little description of how we like you to measure your foot. You trace your foot out. Like it says, there's a video that you can watch if you want. Measure it just to double check. But your size should always be within a half size of what you actually wear. And if it's not, then just contact us. I mean, I usually can respond to Instagram messages or on our website in the corner, you can message us. I usually respond quick, within a couple minutes. So
yeah,
that's, then I would say if you're in between sizes, size up. But all that's on the website. But people always like to ask me anyway. So
yeah,
hopefully that helps some people out.
I'm kind of curious if a sheep feed insole inside the moccasin, what that would do.
Some people like putting insoles in them. The only thing is it makes it a little bit more stiff. Mm-hmm. Totally depends on the terrain you're in.
I don't see myself doing that.
Yeah, some dirt, that's more loamy or like more softer, has more moisture in it, especially back east. Guys that like using these to get into their tree stand,
flatter ground,
or for walking around and hunting squirrels. The insole, you're probably not going to sacrifice much sound. I guess they're not going to be too much louder.
Yeah.
But in the desert, that stiffness is going to make more noise. So it's just trade-offs. It's always trade-offs.
I know when I walk around, in the desert, when you're in a pair of Stockisons and you put your foot down on the ground,
yeah,
there'll be a stick there, and you can feel it before you put all your weight on it, and then you can shift your foot around it so you don't snap things. It's almost like being barefoot. You can kind of feel the ground and out and go, okay, I can put pressure on this and shift your weight. Stalking animals is an art in itself, and
I'm learning that.
I'm surprised how many guys don't have, they'll commit to the next step in the stalk and shift their weight before they've tested the ground, or there's a whole process to this that a lot of people miss when they're sneaking.
I totally agree. I try to stay away from really like selling, like being salesmen, trying to push our product, because I feel like the guys that want it will recognize it. But if I had to go into salesman mode, I would say one of the main things that sold me on the idea when I was just messing around with them and made the first pair, was testing them, was what you just said, the ability to feel the ground and not have to necessarily be looking at the ground as much as I otherwise would. If I'm in socks, especially with my soft feet, I'm terrified. I'm searching the ground when I should have my eyes up, looking to see if, those big velvet antlers turn to look at me or whatever happens. So it really allows you to focus on what you're there to do, as opposed to staring at the ground. You can feel the ground better, just like you would being barefoot, but with a confidence that feels like you're wearing shoes. It's kind of a weird.
When the cactus thing was going on, I was like, I told the guys, here's the thing with cactuses in Alberta is they force you when you take your boots off to move slower.
Yeah. Because I don't know if it's like the terrain in South Dakota is very similar to Alberta. I imagine the cactuses they're all over the place, but they're small and they're hard to see.
Well, that's how it is, or are they big? When I realized that they would be under the grass.
Okay.
And so you couldn't see them anyway.
Yeah.
Then it became like you're feeling with your foot, but then even then, when you put pressure down, there'll be a cactus, dead black one, like underneath the grass, and it'll get you bad. And so then I realized it doesn't matter, even if I do move slow, there's too many landmines here that you will never see.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm done. I need Stockisons. And back to what you were saying about moving, sometimes you need to move quickly. you need to move 30 yards from here to there. And when you're in socks and there's cactuses everywhere, sure, it slows you down, but sometimes you need to be able to just cut to the edge of this bank because the deer's walking underneath.
Yep.
And I don't need to look down when I got Stalkasins on. I can just go.
For the guys wondering, you can stomp. Like, we have a video on our website of us actually stomping on a cactus.
Yep.
And it doesn't do anything.
Yep.
We haven't found a species that'll get thrown. I'm sure there is one somewhere. I'm not going to say they're 100% cactus proof because I'll get sued or something, but we haven't found one that'll get through just by stepping on it, or stomping on it. So
they're remarkable. So, folks, if you're interested, you can check it out. We have the link below in the description field of our YouTube video of this podcast. But you can also just type in Lone Peak Leather Company, and you'll find it.
Yes, sir.
And or Stockisons, and you'll find it. And if you're going to get a pair, now's the time. I highly recommend them. I love them. I wouldn't recommend them if I didn't love the product.
Well, it's cool to see. I mean, I didn't know you wore them as much. I knew you wore them a lot, but I didn't know you put as many miles on them as you have. So
sure, yeah.
I've got some more for you this year. I'll be sending to you.
Right, I'll wear those out too.
Yes, sir. Get your thoughts on the wool ones, so on the hybrids.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I'm anxious to try those out.
It'll be, I mean, since you'll have both, it'll be a type of thing where you're not going to use both in all situations, probably.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean,
I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. So
yeah, I did wear a pair of wool-like ones that were meant to go over a pair of boots that my cousin Ben got at Cabela's. And the little Velcro thing, and they went over the top, and they definitely made your boots more quiet. But I'm like, that's an inferior product compared to a Stockasin, in my opinion, just because you're still in a boot, and a boot is clunky and loud and doesn't have the same maneuverability and stuff that a Stockasin does. So what you've done is you've kind of taken that whole idea and put it into the actual Stockasin. So it'll be interesting. So now no longer am I wearing like a felt thing over a boot. I'm wearing a wool actual moccasin.
with a leather insole that does, should hold back most stuff. So
yep, very curious. All right, Tanner. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Folks, check it out. Lone Peak Leather Company. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.